You are an orc. You are green. This is not a metaphor, not a political statement, and not a liver disease. Just a fact. Skin with a chlorophyll tint, dense like hardened leather, with a smell of iron and wet fur. You are green. You have protruding lower tusks. Your height is somewhere between a large human and something already considered indecent, and a name that in your language sounds like Grak, but in transliteration loses half its meaning and gains something awkward. Call yourself Grak. Everyone does. Over thousands of years, so many Chiji ideas have been placed into you that almost nothing of your own remains. Let's sort it out. You're not a monster. This is important, and it's better to fix it at the beginning, because Dalsha, there will be many reasons to doubt it. A monster exists for horror and does not think. You think, feel, plan dinner. Orcs eat a lot and regularly, and the question of food in your culture occupies the same place that politics does in human society. Everyone is dissatisfied, but things only change when it gets really bad. You're also not stupid. Stupid is simply untrained. You haven't read philosophers or sat in stone buildings listening to a man in robes, but you know how to read tracks in mud after rain, how to tell by the color of smoke whether a settlement is burning or a forest, how to set a trap a bear won't smell, how to stitch a wound with whatever is at hand, and how to negotiate a truce with a clan chief so that both sides think they won. That is intelligence too, just a different kind. Let's start with origin. Not yours personally, but your kind as a whole. Orcs appeared long enough ago that no one remembers exactly how. There are several versions. The gods created you as a draft of humans and didn't bother to redo it. Your humans changed by war, magic, or careless mistake of a mage demiurge. You have always existed. Humans just came later and gave you the wrong name. Your shamans follow a fourth version, that you are children of the earth. The first, not the second. Shamans tend towards solemn formulations. It's a professional trait. The truth, no one knows. Does that bother you? Orcs in general are comfortable existing without a reliable origin, but with a very real present. And the present demands attention more than the past. The clan of the Broken Stone, about 300 orcs. Of them, 100 are battle-capable. The rest are elders, children, the wounded, and one very old shaman, Gorm, who theoretically is also battle-capable, but for the last 20 years prefers conversation. Some consider it wisdom, others a sign of age. Gorm does not comment. You live in the foothills, not in the mountains because it's cold there. And there are elves who can very eloquently explain that the mountains belong to them. Not in the plains, because there are humans with farms, cities, and a principled unwillingness to share space. The foothills are a compromise that suits everyone just enough not to start a war right now. Right now does not mean never. Your childhood was not sentimental, but it was honest. You were born in a year when the clan made an unsuccessful raid to the east and returned with losses, and the understanding that humans had finally learned how to make proper bows. For a young orc, that meant a relatively peaceful childhood. You were taught to hunt, not to fight, to speak, not to intimidate. Your mother, Urga, was the best tracker in the clan. She knew how to stay silent in a way that made it clear she was thinking, not just waiting for you to finish. A valuable skill. You inherited it. Your father, Dirk, an average fighter, an excellent blacksmith. Orcs are not sentimental in the human sense. You never heard from him the words people in human stories usually say in such situations. But he spent 3 weeks making a small iron amulet for you just because, without words, orcs express feelings through actions. This is important to understand. Otherwise, you can live your whole life without noticing that you are loved. Raising an orc is not school. It's participation in clan life with increasing responsibility. At 6, you carry firewood. At 8, your first hunt with adults. The task is not to kill, but to observe and not interfere. At 12, your first independent outing. Return with something edible. You came back with 3 hares and a story that sounded more convincing than it actually was. Gorm listened, looked at the hares, and said that the animals and the story did not match. The hares were eaten. The story was remembered as an example of why adding unnecessary details is unnecessary. At 16, your first clash with nomads. It didn't turn into a war only because their leader turned out to be a reasonable man. You stood in formation and thought, human skin is very thin, and they know it, and that makes them even more dangerous. That was an important observation. The body of an orc, structure and consequences. Height, around 2 meters. Weight, enough that wooden floors in human houses react with concern. Muscle mass is proportionally greater, bones are denser, metabolism is higher. The consequence, you eat a lot, a lot. 2 humans eat less than 1 average orc. This is a constant issue that takes up a significant part of life in any orc community. Tusks. Humans pay a disproportionate amount of attention to them. The lower ones protrude, but only with certain expressions. More of an aesthetic feature than a weapon. As a marker, however, they work perfectly. A human sees tusks and immediately draws conclusions, many of them wrong. Correcting this every time is exhausting. Skin, green. It protects from the sun, heals faster, and looks intimidating to the unaccustomed. People get used to it fairly quickly. Sense of smell, 3 times sharper than a human's. Night vision, sufficient to navigate where a human sees only vague dark shapes. You get sick less often. Your immune system is more resilient, shaped by thousands of years of conditions that a human body would perceive as a slow catastrophe. Clan system, politics without a state. No kings, no central armies, no taxes. There is a chief respected as long as he is effective, a shaman who knows what others do not, elders who remember precedents. Chief Brekar, 40 years old, a reputation for losing rarely. Authority based on respect, not fear. Anyone who disagrees can say it out loud. There is no democracy, but everyone has a voice, if they are ready to take responsibility for it. Conflicts within the clan. First a discussion, then in front of witnesses. In extreme cases, a duel until one yields, not until death. Death within the clan is irreparable. Practical logic, not humanism. But it leads to the same result. Between clans, more complicated. Centuries-old grudges that no one remembers, but everyone follows. Rare large councils, when the threat is significant enough. A great council of orcs, 300 opinions at once, 4 dialects, and 1 Gorm trying to maintain an agenda. It works, slowly, loudly. Your role: scout, negotiator, the one at the border. Most orcs prefer direct roles. A scout requires patience. A negotiator, the ability to hear what is not said, and to hold several versions of truth at once. You can do both. Your first assignment, scouting a new settlement to the southwest. 3 days of observation, no contact. Orcs in the forest, no problem. What's unusual is something else. 3 days watching humans and doing nothing. They don't know they're being studied. Once, a large family held something like a celebration. The smells were good. You spent 3 days eating dry rations, watching them eat hot food. That shapes a certain philosophical attitude toward the task. The settlement is a trading one. Weak fence. Few guards. Brekkar said, a possible partner. Gorm said he already knew. Gorm always says he knew. Second task. First negotiation contact. Enter the settlement. Not get killed at the entrance. Leave with something constructive. An orc entering a human settlement. The first seconds are always the same. Silence. Movement toward weapons or toward doors. A window of 2 to 3 seconds. You learn to keep your hands visible. Speak first. Calmly state your name and clan. A nameless orc is more frightening than a named one. Do not smile. For humans, a smile means friendliness. For an orc, it means tusks. A neutral expression works better. The village elder listened, watched you for a long time, asked what your clan needed. You said, grain. In exchange, hides and iron. He asked, why not attack? You said, an attack means losses. Trade is less risk. He agreed, said it made sense. You said, orcs are reasonable. He said his experience suggested otherwise. You said you understood why. Silence agreement. The first trade deal between your clan and humans in 12 years. Gorm said he had foreseen it. Brekkar hit your shoulder so hard the bottom fell out of your mug. Dirk forged you a knife. No words, just handed it to you. You understood. War. It's always there. Calm periods in the foothills end for reasons that don't always depend on your clan. The Redtooth clan decided one winter that the hunting grounds on the eastern slope belonged to them. Not out of greed, out of survival. The land is limited. Winter is long. 3 meetings on neutral ground. A plateau equally inconvenient for both sides, which makes it ideal. At the first meeting, Gorm was silent, strategically. The Redtooth shaman was silent too. 2 old men saying nothing, watching each other. The negotiator spoke. By the third meeting, an agreement. The land divided along the river. Hunting rights for both sides with seasonal limits. You had to explain to Brekkar that a small restriction is better than a large conflict. He thought for a long time, then agreed, when there is no agreement, there is a fight. No beautiful formations, no speeches. A practical task. Deal enough damage that the other side agrees to negotiations they previously refused. Brutal. Direct. Logically, not very different from what humans do, just with more honesty in the wording. You fight on the perimeter. You are needed alive and thinking. Humans, as you see them, there are many of them. More with each generation. A force you have to deal with. Not ignore. What do you like? Variety. Orcs are more uniform. Humans are not. Dozens of ways to organize society. Religions, building styles. Messy, but alive. Something is always emerging from it. What irritates you? Unstable agreements. A ruler dies, and you start over. Among orcs, continuity of obligations is assumed. Among humans, it isn't. Exhausting. What is hard to understand? Writing as a storage of everything. Gorm knows the history of the clan for 200 years by heart. When humans say that without written record there is no proof, orcs look at them like it's someone who doesn't trust their own legs and asks to be carried to the next room. Elves exist. This has to be accepted as a fact and moved past. Orcs and elves haven't fought for several generations. By elven standards, that's yesterday. For orcs, it's already a tradition. Gorm and the oldest elf of the nearby forest sometimes meet. What they talk about, unknown. Gorm doesn't say. The elf, apparently, doesn't either. What do orcs really think about elves? Smart, long-lived, and because of that, they relate strangely to mortals. For them, death is something that happens to others. Orcs change faster because they live shorter lives, and each generation rethinks what it inherited from the previous one. Sometimes that's an advantage. Everyday life, not romantic, but alive. The clan's camp is semi-permanent. You winter in one place for several years. In spring and summer, part of the clan leaves with hunting groups. You build with wood and stone, food, meat, first of all, grain from trade, root vegetables. You eat a lot. You cook without pretension. There is an old woman, Kir, who does something with boar meat and wild herbs that turns out unexpectedly good. She doesn't share the recipe, says she'll pass it to her daughter. She doesn't have a daughter. No one discusses that contradiction out loud. Rituals and culture. There are celebrations, midwinter, a shared fire, food, stories. Gorm speaks with spirits, or convincingly pretends that he does. The founding day of the clan, a disputed date. Every year, Gorm names a slightly different one. No one argues, because to argue, you need an alternative version, and no one has one. Music, mostly percussive. Drums, horns, human music, string-based, melodic. Sounds like a conversation without intonation. You listened a few times at the market. The second time, you liked it more than the first. Does that say something about human music? Or about you? Unclear. Paravod, Part 7, Final. What have you understood? First, reputation is a tool. Either you hold it, or it holds you. Orcs carry the reputation of being dangerous, stupid, aggressive. And many problems grow directly from that reputation. A human meets an orc with that expectation. The orc reacts to it. Everything confirms itself in a loop. You can break the loop, slowly, one contact at a time. You are breaking it. Second, negotiations work, if both sides want them to work. Sometimes they do. You need to recognize that quickly, so you don't waste time on a tool that won't work. Third, family is not only blood. Contubernia exists among both humans and orcs. The people who are your clan, the ones you share fire with, winter with, hardship with, Dirk without words, Urga with silence, Gorm with words that are more precise than they seem. This is not sentimentality. This is the practical foundation of survival. Fourth, the world is larger than the clan, and that's good, not threatening. Elven music becomes clearer the second time. Dwarven metalwork, something Dirk studies. Human recipes, which Kir occasionally uses without admitting it. All of it becomes part of you, without breaking anything. Fifth, green is just a color. Everything else, you build yourself. Summary numbers. Age, 28. Negotiation contacts with neighboring clans, 7 and 4 years. Successful, 5. 2 ended in conflict. In both cases, you knew in advance. That doesn't always mean it can be prevented. Sometimes it only means you can prepare. Active trade agreements with human settlements, 3. The first and main one, with the Southwestern Trading Settlement. Holding for the second year. First winter volume. 40 measures of grain in exchange for 18 hides and 12 items made by Dirk. Both sides believe they received slightly more than they gave. That's the sign of a good deal. Recon missions 11. Detected in once. Identified as a scout, 0. Mistaken for a lost trader with an unusual appearance. It worked. Winters survived, 28. One was very hard. Little hunting. Neighbors had a poor harvest, nothing to trade. Everyone survived. Barely. Gorm said it makes you stronger. Gorm ate just as much. Knives from Dirk, 2. Both without words. Both good. The second better than the first, which says a lot, because the first was already good. What's next? The trading settlement in the southwest is growing. They now have a blacksmith. Long-term competition for Dirk. You need to think ahead. The Red Tooth clan is honoring the agreement. For now. If winter is harsh, it will put pressure on all agreements. Without exception. Gorm has started walking a little slower. The shaman has no obvious successor. That's a problem that needs to be solved before it becomes urgent. Once, Brekar asked casually, "What do you think about the clan in 20 years?" You said, "I'm thinking about winter in 3 months." He laughed. That's rare for Brekar. You take your knife and go to look at the eastern slope.